I want the film look. You want the film look. Everybody wants the film look. Using film is timeless. It's nostalgic. It's ethereal. The colours are amazing. But shooting film is laborious. It's a pain in the backside, and everything can go wrong. Not to mention stupidly expensive. So how do we replicate the film look on a digital camera? Well, let me show you. I'm going to give you 3 of the very best, in my humble, nerdy opinion, vintage lenses that you can buy for £60 or less. And given what they can do, I think it's well worth it. I see film-like lenses in 4 categories. We have the classic vintage category, then we have the vintage extreme category, and then we have modern vintage and extreme modern vintage. I'll cover those last 3 in a separate video because it turns out I had a hell of a lot to say about the first category, which is the classic vintage lens. So here is my first pick, the Mamiya Seka 28mm f2.8, and I almost certainly butchered that brand name. It's an M42 mount, so it's a screw mount, which is incredibly common and easily found for your vintage lenses, and it's really easy to adapt to your cameras as well. Now, you can buy this lens for as little as 10 quid, but I paid a little bit more because it was listed as mint, and my goodness, can you even see how clear that glass element is? This is the clearest, most pristine vintage lens that I've ever bought, and given my track record with losing lens caps and spray painting things, I'm probably the worst possible owner for this lens, but I will try and keep it pristine. So one thing to keep in mind when you are adapting lenses is crop factors, and I love a 28mm in vintage glass for my Micro Four Thirds setups because the crop factors are pretty decent. So let me just break that down for you quickly. On full frame, of course, a 28mm is a 28mm. It's designed for that 35mm full frame joy. On Micro Four Thirds without a focal reducer, we have to double the focal length, which will give you a 56mm focal length, which isn't terrible. But with a focal reducer on Micro Four Thirds, which gives us a 0.7 times magnification, it gives us around a 40mm focal length. So enough talk, let's go and see it in action. Okay, so let's see the difference compared to more modern lenses. So you can see that there's a nice soft highlight roll off. We can see that the colours are a little bit interesting. We've got nice bloom, things are slightly softer, particularly around the edges. Here are some of the differences you can expect between this and modern glass. So let's move on to my second choice, which is the infamous Helios 442 58mm f2. Now this is of course a classic, and it's the most highly produced lens in the world. This particular one with the zebra stripes is actually only responsible for 4% of the whole Helios manufacturing. So I've got a pretty good rare version for under 20 quid. You gotta brag, I'm sorry. Anyway, back to the lens. Let me just go through the equivalent focal lengths with you quickly. 58mm, it's 58mm on full frame. If you are using a focal reducer, it's a relatively pleasing 80mm on Micro Four Thirds. If you are not using a focal reducer and we just have a 2 times crop, then it becomes a relatively unwieldable 116mm. And because so much of this lens is all about the bokeh around the edges of the frame, because you are effectively shooting the center of the frame, you do lose a lot of those characteristics if you don't use a focal reducer. Top tip. Let me show you what the Helios can do in the real world. Number 3. And the cheapest on the list, this is the Hoya 35mm HMC f2.8. It's tiny and beautiful and super affordable. You can find these for as little as a tenner. And the crop factors for those in the back. It is a 35mm on a full frame camera. With a focal reducer on Micro Four Thirds, it's a very reasonable nifty 50. And then without the focal reducer, with a 2 times crop, it is a 70mm. So the Hoya 35mm is beautiful, cheap, very, very sexy. Let me show you exactly what it can do in the real world now. Let me ask you a question. Do you think vintage lenses are worth it in general if we can fake it using different filters and more modern lenses? We have a clear, clinical Lumix Leica modern lens. And you can add different mist filters in front of your modern glass to get different effects. These are all my filters from Format High Tech, which I absolutely love. And there's even a new one to the lineup made by Philip Bloom himself. I mean, I don't think he was in the factory like making it, but you know, he designed it. And that's a screw-on one, so if you don't want to invest in the whole slotty-in system, you can get the screw-on one and it's really, really nice. So out of those, I think this filter is probably as close as we can get to the blooming and the roll-off that you see in a vintage lens. But there's more things that you can do as well. This is an anamorpho filter. It's basically just a big old oval. You could probably make it yourself, but you know, I'm bougie. I bought it to fit the Helios, and I think a combination like this with the Helios, which gives you swirly bokeh anyway, can give you some incredibly cool results. So you can even sort of fake some classic anamorphic characteristics, but it doesn't stop there. These are flaring filters. This particular one's made by Moment, and I have a blue one and a gold one. So if you want to get some of that cinematic, #cinematic lens flares, you can add that to a modern piece of glass, or you could go wild and even add it on to a vintage lens as well. But my point is, all of this is dial-inable. That's the word I'm going for. As in, you can have as much or as little of the effect as you want. You are in control of it, and ultimately, if you want a really clean image, you can. If you want to go wild and add in 10 mist filters and some lens flares, you also can. This week's sponsorship is not free trial or free until. It is completely free, 4 terabytes for free, if you have an Instagram link or a website or anything to show as your portfolio. This is Playbook. This is an online cloud service for creative specifically. So we have lovely thumbnails, we have lovely folder structure, we have an easy way to search through our content without having stuffy folders like you would see in Google Drive or Dropbox. So for a little bit of peace of mind, I've started backing up every single project of my edited JPEGs. So I've got the Faroe Islands, I've got Madeira. Even if you're not even planning to use it, if you're going to get 4 terabytes of free storage, you may as well blooming sign up. So if that sounds good to you, please use the link below and show Playbook that I was the one that was shouting about it, because it does help to support this channel. And I hope you enjoy your free cloud storage and you find it useful in 2024 with whatever creative endeavors you get up to. If you have a vintage lens, it is baked into the footage, so there are pros and cons to both. The biggest pro, in my opinion, for vintage lens is the price. You can get some amazing effects for a fraction of the price. So it really does bear thinking about. And even if you faked everything until you're blue in the face with a mist filter and some post-editing and some fake halation, I do think there are just some characteristics that you cannot fake when you compare it to an actual vintage lens. And isn't that the most fun part? Because these lenses are so old, the copy that I buy could be completely different or slightly different to the copy that you buy. Age has an effect. The way the lens has been cared for has an effect. These things could give you a totally unique look. And I think that's something that we're all striving for as photographers and videographers. Remember at the beginning I said that I have a lot more to say on the subject. If you'd like to see the other 3 categories, which are vintage extreme, modern vintage, and also modern extreme, check out this video next.